Exposed, how 8 transformative years in Berlin revealed my unexpected strength against mockery. Emily stood at the entrance of the lavish gallery, the clinking glasses and whispered critiques crashing around her like a tidal wave, pulling her under. Her heart raced, a chaotic symphony of fear and determination. 8 years she had fought, clawing her way from a neglected assistant in her small Texas town to this vibrant hub of artistry. Yet here, it felt like all her disappointment had caught up with her. Did any of these bold, sophisticated artists see anything but a lone Texan with brush strokes echoing insecurity? The weight of judgments loomed heavy. Each scrutinizing gaze felt like an accusation her past deemed not enough. Why had she come to Berlin, a city where art thrived on provocations, when her own brush had been cultivated in simple honesty? The irony of her own ambition now tangled her in desperation. Beneath the fierce energy of the crowd lay a simmering unease. What if tonight was merely a stage for her failure? Before she even realized it, her mind flickered back to her family's practice, where hard work meant more than recognition. Her mother's kind smile, her father's tireless hands against this backdrop of elitist discussions, their values now seemed like relics of brighter days, overshadowed by the acclaimed and the envied. She clutched her sketchbook, the pages brimming with raw emotions, every line drawn, a constant reminder of mockery that stung in the silent corners of her mind. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she stood there, an unnoticed outsider, a familiar face caught her eye, a retired mentor who had seen her potential long before she did. The thought of his oil paint-stained hands, waving vehemently as he expressed belief in her artistry, could barely quell the swell of anxiety building inside her. How could she ever meet his expectations, let alone the standards of these skeptics? The chaos swirled, tightening around her throat like a noose as she felt the sting of old insecurities rise to the surface. Just as she began to sculpt her artistic voice, a recent scandal erupted, whispers of accusations curdling into undeniable rumors. The very few who had once dismissed her abruptly turned into her fiercest critics, thrusting her deeper into a pit of despair. The weight of their scorn threatened to obliterate her aspirations as she envisioned her dreams collapsing, like a house of cards caught in a gust of wind. Tomorrow's gallery show loomed, and with it, the dawning realization that every judgmental gaze, every whispered critique would be focused solely on her. She longed to convey her family's legacy through her work, to drown the critics in a flood of meaning derived from hard work and authenticity, but doubt crept in. Could she channel her anger and anguish into a canvas that sang of every scarred experience? As she edged closer to the exhibit, she wondered if she had enough strength to confront those who so eagerly sought to belittle her. The air thickened, laden with tension, curiosity, and skepticism. Would she rise miraculously from the ashes of their mockery, or would that same darkness snuff out her light before she even had the chance to shine? Emily's breath was inconsistent, her muscles tense, every heartbeat echoing the question she couldn't yet answer. She stood there, on the cusp of everything she had fought for, caught between past and present. The final moment of truth hung precariously in the world around her. The next morning broke with a hazy light filtering through the window, casting tentative shadows across Emily's small studio. The calm seemed almost mocking, juxtaposed against the storm of uncertainty brewing inside her. She eyed her canvases, accusations reflected in every brushstroke. How could something once filled with promise now become a battleground of insecurity? Today, this would change. Determined, she began organizing her supplies, a ritual grounding her amidst the whirlwind of anticipation. The very act of preparing ignited a flicker of purpose. She was no longer merely a participant aiming to appease the critics. Today, she would fight for her voice, for the authenticity embedded deep within every element of her art. She had poured her soul into these pieces, each brushstroke a testament to grit, resilience, and a narrative unseen by the judgment surrounding her. As she stood before her latest work, a chaotic blend of colors and emotions, memories rushed in a bustling family kitchen, her mother guiding her hands across the canvas, imparting wisdom wrapped in love. Those were the moments that shaped her, even more than the accolades she yearned for now. The essence of her artistry emerged from the heart, not from fleeting trends. The gallery atmosphere grew dense with excitement as she arrived, the walls draped in a myriad of artworks glowing with brilliance and bravado. Yet, the colors that filled the space felt pale against the loud criticisms echoing in her mind. Suddenly, her insecurities bubbled to the surface again. Would her work resonate in this sea of talent? Perhaps art should be a statement, but could her modest Texas roots withstand the intensity of Berlin's avant-garde scene? Finding herself adrift in a sea of artistic elites, anxiety twitched within her. She clutched her sketchbook, now a gateway to her past, flipping through pages filled with uncertainties and hopes left unexpressed. What would they say? Would they find value in the rawness of her journey, or simply see it as a weakness? Then she caught sight of her mentor, now weaving through the crowd, a beacon of encouragement amongst the chaos. It was now or never. Gathering her resolve, she strode toward him. Their shared laughter once echoed in the galleries of her dreams, and today, she sought validation from that laughter once again. "Emily," he exclaimed, his voice warm with familiarity. As they spoke, she could sense curiosity woven into his words. But was it merely sympathy? She fought against the urge to retreat back to the shadows. "I've seen your progress. I know you have the power within you to confront this moment. Trust yourself, not their perceptions." His words cut deep, igniting both doubt and a burgeoning belief. There always existed a space between what others perceived and what she embodied, a space that was now begging to be filled with authenticity, not hesitation. As she inhaled, the weight of her intention grounded her, a conscious decision to be unapologetically herself. With her heart pounding in unison with the rhythm of the crowd, Emily resolved to unveil her work with bravery. She would draw from the harshness of their critiques, using it as fuel rather than a roadblock. Tonight would be a testament to her journey, each stroke calling forth a narrative that needed sharing. Just as she began to step into the space where her work hung, eyes turned towards her, the questioning mixed with anticipation, barriers of judgment teetering on the brink of collapse. This was nothing less than a moment of confrontation for those who regarded her with disdain. The whispers that had once taunted now trembled in her veins, and Emily stood ready to wield her truth like a shield. A sense of exhilaration surged, a visceral acknowledgement of her own worth as she awaited the unfolding of this night. Yet, just as she caught her breath, a fleeting glance drew her attention. One figure resembled an unexpected adversary from her past, a reminder of the mockery she fought hard to escape. The challenge that lay ahead had shifted. Was she prepared for this confrontation, not just of art, but of her own identity? The moment pulsed with an unsettling energy, compelling her to embrace whatever came next. Emily steadied her breath, her pulse quickening as she focused on the prominent figure lingering at the edge of the gallery. It was as if time twisted around her, the vibrant surroundings dimming to a muted swirl. Memories flooded in the sharp laughter from years past, the way it felt to be reduced to a mere joke, an emotional casualty in the competition of artistic merit. Could she tread past this specter from her past? The unfamiliarity of self-doubt surged forward, a stark contrast to the fire ignited by her mentor's words. Yet, the knowledge stirred within her, she was no longer the timid girl who had once shrunk away. She carried the weight of her experiences each moment, the bruises of rejection, and the triumphs of pushing through, forged into a stronger identity. This was her moment to redefine what it meant to be an artist on her own terms. As the energy of the gallery buzzed with anticipation, Emily reminded herself of her purpose. This space was not merely a stage for judgment, it was her canvas, a platform for her narrative to unfold, raw and unapologetic. The myriad faces around her didn't define her artistry, the colors she had enveloped herself in did. In those bold strokes, she saw not just artistry, but a reflection of her journey. Determination rallied within. She made her way through the crowd, moving deliberately, her feet firmly planted as she approached the spot where her artwork awaited. Each step was a reclamation of power, an assertion that she would no longer be naive to criticism but instead a warrior of her fate. Her pieces, with all their imperfections, spoke truths that deserved to be witnessed, challenges faced in the oscillating journey of her own growth. With one hand clutching her sketchbook, a confidant of fears and ambitions, she placed her other hand against the vibrant canvas. "Expose yourself," she whispered distractedly to herself. It was as if the words echoed through her veins, urging her to reveal the deepest corners of her mind. With a final breath, she turned to face the crowd, determined to claim her space among them. The former laughter that had haunted her transformed into mere background noise, a faint echo rather than a menacing presence. She would engage with that energy, allowing it to vitalize rather than immobilize her spirit. As she began speaking, sharing stories woven into the fabric of each piece, she noticed a shift in the audience. A curiosity sparked in their eyes, a glimmer of recognition of the vulnerability she laid bare. Her heart swelled with unexpected pride, illuminating a truth she had long buried: the journey of her being was indeed worth celebrating, for both herself and anyone who dared to listen. Drawing on her newfound resolve, Emily strove to connect, to challenge the whispers that had once sought to belittle her artistry. With each word, she painted her own narrative, affirming the power of courage through expression. Her voice, hesitant at first, grew robust, echoing off the gallery walls. She ventured into discussing not just her experiences but the vulnerabilities shared by every artist, a universal struggle that resonated deeply. But just as she began revealing her truth, a shadow fell across her words, the figure from her past now standing at the forefront, arms crossed and a sneer hinting at old judgments. In that moment, the crowd seemed to hold its breath, their attention carved into an electrifying silence, waiting to witness the confrontation that had now become inevitable. Was she prepared to face the very embodiment of her fears, or would she falter, allowing the past to seep back into the essence of her present? As a knot tightened in her stomach, Emily felt a powerful wave crashing against her resolve. The shift had occurred, and with it, the stakes had dramatically risen. She had come too far to retreat now. The battle was not just for acceptance but for her complete and unyielding self-acceptance. The air thickened with tension, the gallery alive with breaths held in anticipation, revealing a moment that could alter everything she thought she had achieved. Would she confront the figure from her past, or would they continue to cast a shadow over her evolving identity? Emily prepared to unveil her final act, one that would either shatter old narratives or illuminate a path towards newfound freedom. Emily squared her shoulders, the figure from her past looming like an unshakable season of her life, one that had sown the seeds of doubt deep within her. With each heartbeat resounding in her ears, she strove to marinate in the moment, to embrace the dissonance between who she once was and who she had chosen to become. As the silence deepened, she acknowledged the origin of this challenge, a time overshadowed by a mentor's cruel dismissal masquerading as constructive feedback, when her art had been a source of vulnerability that had led to her insecurities today. But that was merely a shadow, and she was now stepping into the light. With a calculated breath, she elevated her voice, allowing its quiver to fade into resolve. "When I first held the brush," she began, her gaze steadying on the critical eyes now aflame with insatiable curiosity, "it was a shield against the world, a means to scream when silence was the expectation." She designated the words, not only to the audience but as a message directed at the figure, the embodiment of her cowardice. She continued, weaving a narrative that stitched together honesty and bravery. Years passed, and that shield became a mirror reflecting not just my imperfections, but also my journey towards self-acceptance. Every brushstroke here is a testament to that battle. People leaned in, human connection forming involuntarily as an undercurrent among the crowd. Emily, inspired by their response, presented her artwork not merely as finished pieces, but embodiments of struggles, reflections of her growth that flourished in adversity. The colors, the contours, each element resonating with experiences that had shaped her, transforming pain into celebration. Yet, throughout her speech, the figure remained a beacon of apprehension. Their gaze was now fixed, and in the flickering shadows of their scrutiny, Emily faced a crucial moment. She had an opportunity not just to clarify her artistic choices but to redefine the narrative that had once paralyzed her. "What they saw as faults, I realized, are simply indicators of vulnerability," Emily challenged, resolving to capture the audience's attention fully. "My interpretation of the world is forged from every disheartening comment, every dismissal. They don't define me, they enlighten my art. In my work, I invite you to confront your own fears, your own vulnerabilities. This is how we grow." With that bold declaration, she caught the figure's eyes and held their gaze, refusing to waver. The crowd now thrummed with energy, murmurs of understanding stirring as she delved deeper into her narrative. The real confrontation was not solely with the figure standing before her, it was with the internalized doubt lurking within her. Even as realization shimmered in the audience's eyes, doubt still clung to the edges of her confidence. What if her words fell flat? What if the familiar smile on that figure's face returned, laced with the mockery of yesteryears? But she pressed on, championing vulnerability as a strength, each syllable enunciated with newfound veracity. If I can stand here, unclad of fear, seeking approval only from my heart and my canvas, then I challenge you to do the same, she declared, her pulse pounding with empowerment. The response was electric, the audience swayed, some nodding. Hope kindled within her, bathed in solidarity. This was not merely a defense, it was a revolution, a beckoning for all present to reclaim their narratives. And the figure shifted, their expression lacking the smugness she had known. Instead, there was a flicker of recognition, as if her words were a mirror reflecting not just their judgments but the part of themselves that, perhaps, also needed liberating. Just then, as Emily thought triumphantly that the conversation had shifted, an unexpected interruption ruptured the moment, plunging her into uncertainty once more. A voice chimed in from the crowd, dismissive and pointed, but can art really be separated from its critic? What if it's all just a charade? The challenge hung heavy in the air, its implications threatening to unravel her growing confidence. Emily took a breath, ready to counter yet another misinterpretation of her journey. This was a new frontier in her battle for acceptance, and she would not back down. As she steadied her resolve, she realized this could lead to defining her path forward. Would she embrace the challenge, bringing clarity to her message, or allow the seeds of doubt to root again? With her heart racing, she prepared to dive deeper, revealing layers of herself that were yet unseen. The question lingered in the air like a storm cloud, casting a shadow over her newfound confidence. Emily felt her heart race, aware that this was more than just a rebuttal, it was a pivotal moment in her journey, a chance to dig deep into her identity as both an artist and a person. She would not allow the voice to drown out the conviction rising within her. Is art a charade? She echoed, her tone measured yet resonating with conviction. Art is a mirror, a lens through which we view the world and, in turn, ourselves. It's informed by every critique, every celebration, every moment of doubt. The audience remained still, anticipation rippling through them as she embarked on this uncharted path. What you see may feel superficial, but beneath the surface lie layers of authenticity. Every brushstroke is charged with passion, pain, and resilience, a testament not just to creative ambition but to an ongoing fight against the very brutality that seeks to suppress us. The words flowed from her, each one an affirmative nudge against the doubts that had once shackled her. The figure in the crowd, despite their earlier outburst, seemed to lean in, curiosity taking root where skepticism once blossomed. Was it possible they, too, could recognize the melancholy beauty in vulnerability? I invite you, Emily continued, pulsing with a newfound rhythm, to see past the facade of art as entertainment or a mere display of talent. What if we instead unearth our experiences through it? What if we embrace our narratives as an art form? Mine has taken 8 transformative years in Berlin, where I uncovered hidden talents and learned resilience amid mockery. There was a crackle of energy in the air as her narrative buoyed them along. She felt emboldened by the gazes fixed upon her, absorbing not only their curiosity but their silence. A hush of introspection settled over the crowd as she recounted those years, a time of frustration and discovery, of losses that transformed her palette of understanding. I was once terrified of imperfection, Emily confessed, her voice rising in intensity. But I learned that failure was not the opposite of success, it was part of it. In Berlin, I explored every corner of my craft, evolving in ways I could not have foreseen. The critics? They became a part of my learning process. At first, I crawled into my shell. But slowly, I began to take the brush, and rather than facing the art, I turned it back on myself. Each word unlocked doors she had left shut for too long. She unveiled the techniques that had appeared naive but had instead been her foundation. She recounted moments in her studio filled with self-doubt, the sting of criticism surging through her like an electric current, only for it to spark something unexpectedly powerful. Every laugh, every scoff prompted me to ask, what do I truly believe about my art? And with that question, the layers were stripped away, revealing strengths I never knew existed. The crowd began to shift as if in a dance, drawn to her light as she gathered the fragments of their attention, piece by piece. They were a community, listening not just to an artist, but a fellow traveler on a path of self-discovery. Then, the figure of stark contrast to the rest interrupted once more, this time quieter, almost contemplative. So, you're saying that rejection can lead to empowerment? In that moment, Emily felt a rush of clarity. Exactly. Growth is born from discomfort. The discomfort you create in others can illuminate your truth. If I can find strength in the glares of cynicism, then imagine what is possible for you. So, I challenge you, let go of the fear of judgment, just as I did. Transform those criticisms into your own brushstrokes of resilience. As her voice echoed, the figures shifted again, their expression betraying a softening resolve. There was tension in their body language, the mirror of their previous self-importance melting away. Yet, the unease surged back with the next probable challenge. A nervous laughter rippled through the audience, and she saw a few familiar faces frown. But what if we're wrong and our art is the charade? Emily locked eyes with them, the weight of the question pulling her in two directions, uncertainty pooling at her feet. Each member of the audience now held an expectation, and she felt the walls of her courage begin to waver ever so slightly. As she prepared to respond, the figure's earlier criticisms intertwined with the doubts of the crowd, demanding clarity, driving her back to the brink of hesitation. Would they see the truth she had wrestled with for years, or would they only find comfort in what they already believed? As she opened her mouth to speak, the crossroads of self-recognition and external judgment collided, thrusting Emily into an impending revelation that could reshape her existence. The moment for resolution was upon her, yet it was laden with uncertainty, as she braced herself for the repercussions of what she might unleash. Emily paused, the question hanging like a pendulum, swinging back and forth between fear and conviction. She could sense the shift in energy, the anticipation morphing to a subtle tension. This was not merely about defending her art, it was a confrontation with her own fear of being unmasked. Art is not simply a performance for your applause, she began, each word calculated, but a sanctuary for the soul. It's where the messy, chaotic essence of our humanity breathes life. The path of creation is littered with mistakes, misjudgments, and yes, charades. But identifying those falsehoods is essential for growth. Doubt lurked in the eyes of some, but others began to soften, perhaps understanding her rebellion against the very notion of perfection. Emily felt emboldened, yet she had to ground herself. To call art a charade is to deny its power. If you're doing it for the sake of approval, that essay critique I understand. I've stood in those shoes, too. Her hand gestured toward the figure who had challenged her earlier, an unspoken question in the air. Can you see yourself in my words? What if she could ignite something in them, a recognition of their own struggles? Imagine sitting alone with your thoughts, grappling with your fears and frustrations. That was my Berlin, my struggle. Many nights, the solitude intertwined with self-doubt felt unbearable. I convinced myself that I had been playing a part, putting forth an image that might not reflect my true essence. The crowd was silent, their breathing synchronized with her rhythm. But it was in this discomfort that I began peeling back layers, revealing what truly mattered. I learned that navigating criticism requires a firm grasp on your identity. Wouldn't it be liberating to find the power in embracing who we are, imperfections and all? The earlier dissenters listened, faces drawn in contemplation as if wrestling with their own experiences. She pressed on. Rejection, my friends, is not a vindication of your ineptitude. It can illuminate the path to a version of ourselves we have yet to meet. As she articulated her belief, she recalled a particularly challenging week in her studio, riddled with doubt as her paintings went unrecognized. With each stroke of the brush, she felt her spirit deplete, prompting her to question everything. She remembered waking, recoiling from a mirror that reflected a query she was not prepared to confront. Who was she without external validation? This was a common thread. She realized a fear of being unworthy surfaced through various avenues of life, be it in art, relationships, or self-perception. I'm not immune to criticism, she confessed, the vulnerability of her words resonating. In fact, I've been cracked open by the experience, like a canvas that has been painted and repainted, forever bearing the marks of each cycle. My scars shape who I am as an artist. What are yours shaping you into? With that question, there was an unmistakable shift in the air. She could sense it. Individuals leaned toward her as if gravitating towards newfound insight. Emily realized that her truth laid bare was healing not only herself but the audience sharing this moment. But the fears still lingered, as unfurling takes time. Are you ready to dig deeper, to confront your art, your life, your fears? She asked, her voice ringing with urgency. Or will you remain shackled by the need for approval? There was a trembling quality to the air, she felt it too. The weight of vulnerability tugged at her own resolve. She could see glimmers of recognition, perhaps an awakening spurred by her challenge. Then, from the back, a voice broke through the silence, laden with skepticism, a final attempt to undermine her. And what if in being authentic, we reveal something we don't like? What then? The question ignited a spark, thrusting Emily into a confrontation she hadn't anticipated. Would authenticity lead to empowerment or further exposure of her insecurities? As she prepared to respond, her heart raced. The horizon of revelation stretched before her, promising both danger and deep transformation. This engagement was morphing into something far more profound than she had imagined. The moment was ripe with possibility. What could it unveil next? Would she risk confronting not just her audience's doubts but her own hidden fears as well? She took a breath, ready for the collision of introspection and revelation. Would she emerge stronger, or would the shadows of doubt reclaim their hold? Let me ask you this, Emily began, her voice steadier now, a palpable strength threading through her words. What does it mean to be authentic? Is it simply about exposing our flaws, or is it about finding resilience amidst them? The crowd remained silent, captivated. She could see the gears of thought turning in their minds, and she pressed on. When I first began sharing my work, art that bared my soul, I feared it would create a chasm between me and my worth. But I learned that vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a bridge. Each critique I faced, each mockery I endured, wasn't just a reflection of me but a challenge to redefine what I stood for. As she leaned into the moment, realization washed over her. The journey through fear and rejection was not a solitary one, it was collective, a tapestry woven of individual threads. Struggling to unveil her truth felt something akin to painting on a canvas, each swipe of color and texture a moment of courage. She glanced around, taking in the varied expressions of those present. Some were deep in thought, while others grappled with the emotions of connection and fear. Here was a fertile ground for growth. Facing the unknown is part of every artist's journey. It demands you delve into the marrow of your existence and confront the shadows that lie within. But those shadows needn't dictate your value. As she spoke about her experiences in Berlin, the long nights spent wrestling with canvases that seemed to mock her efforts, an idea began to form. Maybe the key lay in not just striving for perfection but fully embracing the process of growth, with all the mess it entailed. In those transitional moments, I discovered something unexpected. Beneath every layer of self-doubt was an emerging strength, waiting to surface. Images flickered in her mind, sketchbooks filled with frantic scribbles during bouts of despair, hours spent in cafes listening to strangers' stories, and nights lit by the glow of her studio that felt like a crucible of transformation. Each instance served as an anchor, grounding her to the relentless pursuit of understanding both her art and herself. Some of you might fear revelation, the unmasking of vulnerabilities, she continued, leaning forward, her brow furrowed in sincerity. But I urge you to shift that perception. What if those shadows weren't something to evade but rather sources of light? An opportunity for introspection and connection? Each moment of vulnerability seized was like dousing the stage in bright colors, revealing the authentic self beneath the expectations. She began to formulate a challenge, one not just for her audience but for herself. What if we choose to view authenticity as a process of empowerment rather than a prerequisite of perfection? The act of exposing oneself offers the possibility of fortitude. The mood shifted, and energy rippled through those gathered. They appeared to oscillate between unease and anticipation as the contours of her argument sank in. Emily, sensing it, felt buoyed by the collective possibilities emerging in the room. Yet the voice from before re-emerged, sharper now. And if those revelations don't align with our aspirations? What then? Are we prepared to bear the weight of disappointment? Her heart raced. The challenge was real, and she had to confront it. But what if we aren't meant to always align? The question echoed back as she chewed on the idea. What if our very misalignments lead us to unexpected avenues of growth? With a sudden clarity, she understood that the harshest criticisms might not stem from an audience's disdain but from their reflections on their unresolved struggles. I found that in confronting my flaws, I no longer see them as failures but as entrances to art and life that resonate deeper and truer. Suddenly, the tender ache to be accepted became a call to action. And there it was, a pulse of instinct urging her forward. The fear of exposing too much was diminishing, replaced by the drive to harness her journey. The answer to her journey lay not just in her solitary experiences but also among those she shared it with. So I propose we embrace our misalignments, she declared confidently, adrenaline coursing through her. Let us paint them boldly on our canvases, acknowledge them in our lives, and maybe, just maybe, this act of exposure will transform those insecurities into solidarity. Her declaration hung in the air, electric with potential. With hearts pounding and curiosity piqued, a new understanding settled among them. The question remained, would they all take the leap into this newfound territory of revelation? As she awaited their response, an unexpected thought struck her: could embracing imperfection itself become a new work of art? The journey beckoned her onward, unveiling further transformations yet to come. The chatter of the crowd faded into a hushed murmur as Emily expanded her thoughts, clinging to the energy she had ignited. It felt right to dive deeper into the unfamiliar territory she had just broached: authenticity, vulnerability, the very fabric of the art she created and the life she led. What lay beneath the surface was still shrouded in mystery, waiting for her to navigate through it all. She took a moment, inhaling the tension in the space. The room felt thick with anticipation, and she wondered if the silence indicated discomfort or curiosity. What if we stripped away the critique, the potential disappointment, and simply focused on the act of creation itself? Emily's voice resonated, carrying her thoughts across the room. Where would that leave us? In her own mind, she sensed a shift. This was about more than just addressing an audience. It was about challenging her own preconceived notions and fears, grappling with the shadows of what was yet to come. She thought about her time in Berlin, the loneliness that wrapped around her like a shroud when she first arrived, every blank canvas a reflection of her unexpressed anxieties. Images of early mornings in her cramped studio flooded in, an unkempt space littered with the remnants of past works, thoughts and aspirations pinned onto walls she had hoped would inspire brilliance. But those very remnants also revealed the evolution of her artistry. In every failed piece, she preserved the rawness of her struggle. What if each brushstroke is a testament not just to triumph but to the trials that precede it? She pondered aloud. Her purpose began crystallizing. This wasn't merely about imparting wisdom but rather embracing every part of the journey. The secrets she had kept from herself until that moment started forming into a coherent narrative, as if she were piecing together a puzzle that had long eluded her. As she continued speaking, layering her words with intention, she felt a shift not only within herself but also within her audience. They shifted in their seats, a collective understanding dawning. Could it be that by daring to share their vulnerabilities, they could learn to celebrate each other's imperfections just as readily as their triumphs? Then, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind, a familiar old friend beckoning with its seductive whispers. What if this very openness opened her up to ridicule, rejection, or worse? A challenge had risen within. She had to confront this fear right then and there. I can't pretend it's easy, she confessed, because the truth is, the weight of judgment never truly dissipates. We must boldly face those judgments if we want to flourish. The sincerity in her voice may have sparked something in the audience. She could see individuals nodding, a spark igniting in some as their eyes brightened. Her realization that vulnerability demanded not just courage, but a commitment to honor herself through art, compelled her further down this new path of exploration. Yet, she also knew that every journey requires navigating turmoil. What about the next canvas? Would she continue to allow fear to dictate her choices, or would she venture into the emptiness and embrace whatever came as part of the process? The stark contrast between the possibilities was hypnotic, and she felt drawn to the idea of transforming trepidation into artistry. Stepping closer to the edge of her comfort zone, she formulated her next challenge not for her audience, but for herself. Tomorrow, I will create a piece that embodies both my fears and my hopes. A manifesto of sorts. I challenge each of you to do the same. Channel your shadows into your own creations. Then, before her self-doubt could take hold again, she posed a question that struck at the very core of her being. What if that piece, that representation of our vulnerabilities, becomes our most powerful work yet? The room vibrated with energy. Each face now bore a mixture of trepidation and excitement. Emily could feel it, a palpable momentum edging them closer to the leap she was proposing. Would they take that plunge with her? As her heart raced in anticipation of their response, a small voice whispered in the back of her mind, what if the very act of confronting her fears unlocked potential she had never considered? The vulnerability would not just transform her art, it could unearth a strength emerging from the depths of her insecurities. And just like that, the next chapter of her journey lay open, carved out of uncertainty yet pulsating with possibility. Would she rise to meet it? Emily awoke the next morning with the sun filtering through the curtains. Something in that gentle light stirred anticipation within her. Today was the day she would confront the amalgamation of fear and hope painted against the backdrop of her life. She needed to embrace the journey, the internal turbulence, and cultivate that into something meaningful. As she prepared for the day, her fingers trembled slightly, a mixture of excitement and an undeniable wave of anxiety crashing over her. In the flurry of her morning routine, she found herself staring at her reflection, analyzing the shadows beneath her eyes, remnants of sleepless nights that stemmed from self-doubt. Yet, there was something else tugging at her, a flicker of resolve. Could she transform her uncertainty into creativity? Was it possible that showcasing her vulnerability could actually strengthen her artistry? With a determined nod, Emily grabbed her paintbrushes and canvas, the tools of her expression, and made her way to the studio. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of her challenge pressing down like a shroud. The studio, a familiar space fraught with memories of failed attempts and half-finished artworks, suddenly felt like a battleground. As she stood before the blank canvas, a flood of thoughts cascaded through her mind. How could she translate the storm of emotions into something visually impactful? What components of her experiences in Berlin could serve as the foundation upon which she would build this masterpiece of vulnerability? She realized she had to dig deep into her past, to examine the fractures that had shaped her loneliness, the pressure to succeed, and the fear of being judged. Opening the drawers of her mind, she unearthed memories like relics, a time when she felt isolated and invisible yet determined to carve a niche for herself in a city alive with creativity. Each stroke of her brush began to embody these moments, reflecting both her struggles and small victories. She mixed colors wildly on her palette, searching for the shades that matched her emotional state. The dark, muddy hues represented her fear, while vibrant colors symbolized her hopes. As the hours passed, she became engulfed in the act of creating a meditative journey that blurred the lines between past pain and present possibility. With every stroke, the canvas transformed, morphing into a compelling representation of her narrative. What originally felt chaotic morphed into a beautiful symphony of colors, a vivid testament to her experiences in Berlin. In this process, Emily wrestled with feelings of resentment toward herself. The fear that loomed nearby whispered doubts. What if others interpreted her piece differently? What if the judging eyes found her work lacking? Suddenly it struck her, that was precisely the point. She realized her work was not meant to appease others but to speak her truth, to embody her unique perspective rather than conforming to an ideal. Her heart swelled with newfound determination and self-compassion as she continued painting. She envisioned the completed piece not just as a reflection of her battles but as a breakthrough, a manifesto of resilience and self-acceptance that would shape her future. By confronting her past, she was crafting a path toward her authenticity. As she stepped back to assess her work, something stirred deep within her, a profound sense of catharsis. The vulnerabilities she once shielded now shimmered in the light, no longer sources of shame, but threads woven into the rich fabric of her narrative. In that moment, everything crystallized. She no longer sought validation, she was ready to embrace her truth. But even as the exhilaration surged through her, a chilling thought crept into her mind. How would her peers react when she unveiled this piece? Would it resonate with them or challenge them too deeply? Here on this precipice of revelation, she faced her final, looming question. Were others ready to embrace their darkness as she had? Could they handle the truth if she laid herself bare before them? With her heart pounding in anticipation, she prepared for the moment that could redefine not only her art but her entire journey. The time had come to share her creation, to strip away the layers of judgment and reveal the depths of her soul. Would she find an audience willing to journey with her into these shadows? Emily stood in front of her finished canvas, a chaotic blend of rich colors that depicted not just her journey but the culmination of the tumultuous cycle she had endured. The gallery was set for her exhibition, and she could feel the weight of anticipation all around her. Gone were the doubts that once haunted her. Today, she would stand firmly in her truth, her art a messenger of resilience and authenticity. As she unveiled her work, an electric silence filled the room. Friends and critics alike gazed at their reflections, hidden behind judgments that previously overshadowed her. Each brushstroke spoke of vulnerability, hope, and growth. Her journey was painted into every contour, paralleling her internal battle with fear and the acceptance of imperfection. What had once been a source of insecurity became a vibrant narrative that flowed from her heart onto the canvas. She had traded her protective armor of hesitation for a new strength forged in understanding her identity. She achieved not only professional recognition but also personal wholeness, shedding the skin of self-doubt she had worn for far too long. The initial murmur in the crowd morphed into an engaged discussion, where onlookers drew parallels to their own struggles. The audience began to comprehend the depth of her work's emotion. Emily could see their eyes widen and brows furrow in thoughtful contemplation. It was not mere admiration, it was a connection ignited by shared experiences. Before her stood not the judgmental figures from her past but individuals reflecting pieces of herself. Critics were no longer adversaries, they urged her forward on her journey as she found validation through authentic expression. "Can you feel it?" her mentor whispered, a knowing smile gracing his lips. The validation seeped through the walls of her fears, filling the void that previously held her hostage. As the evening continued, the conversations sparked around her a genuine dialogue of artistic exploration and personal growth. A surreal sense of fulfillment washed over her. She had not just created art, she had crafted a narrative that resonated, weaving a tapestry of shared humanity. The applause that followed was a sound she had long yearned for but now realized was secondary to her newfound confidence. She had uncovered resilience in her vulnerability, and in doing so, had built a bridge toward empowering others to share their truths. The growth she experienced shaped by struggle became evident when she lifted her chin high, a declaration of her metamorphosis solidified. In that moment, Emily acknowledged the contrast from where she had begun. She had journeyed from a timid artist obscurely blending into her surroundings to a powerful voice advocating authenticity. Embracing her individuality transformed her from a silent sufferer to a resilient force, inspiring others to pursue their narratives with the bravery they had subconsciously admired in her. Yet the triumph extended beyond recognition, it was deeply personal. Emily had proven to herself that she possessed the strength to confront her insecurities. Mockery no longer controlled her narrative. She had become both teacher and student in this evolving landscape of artistry, discovering that the most profound achievements come from introspection and sharing one's vulnerabilities. With every brushstroke of her journey represented in that gallery, she stood proud, her journey mattered, her voice commanded respect, and more importantly, she now accepted herself wholly. Emily had risen to claim not just her pieces of art but her rightful place among artisans, storytellers, and fellow travelers on a shared path of vulnerability and growth. As the last guests departed and the lights dimmed, she took a final moment amidst her artwork, reflecting on the immense journey and the truth she had embraced. She stepped back knowing that this was not merely an end but a new beginning, fully conscious of the impact her art could have, revealing courage, igniting voices, and ushering forth an appreciation for the beautiful complexity of the human experience. Now was the moment to share this journey with others who dared to confront their own struggles through art. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.